Greetings and welcome to the Astronomy Picture of the Day podcast. Today's picture for January 12th of 2025 is titled Mimas, small moon with a big crater. So what do we see here? Well, here we see one of the smaller moons of Saturn, or at least one of its smaller moons that is round. That means it has enough mass gravitationally to pull itself into a sphere, which is the natural shape for anything under a significant amount of gravitational force. So smaller moons could appear irregularly shaped, but all large moons will appear in a spherical or an ellipsoidal shape when we look at them. And that goes for anything larger like planets and stars as well. Anything bound together individually by its own gravity. Now this is one of the smallest of those moons, and it is one of the moons of Saturn. And we see the large crater there off to the right hand side. And that crater is named Herschel after the discoverer of Mimas, who was Sir William Herschel. Now it is large enough that this impact came very close to shattering this moon and destroying it. And we can judge that by how large this crater is relative to the size of the moon itself. It is a large proportion of that, and the large impact that had to have occurred to form this would have come very close to shattering this object, meaning that of course there could have been other moons that were shattered by large impacts in the past. Now Mimas is actually made up of ice. And that's what we're seeing here. When we look at this, while our minds may interpret that as being rocky material, much like our own moon, the moons in the outer solar system, with very few exceptions, are made up of ice. And that's because there was a lot more icy material out in the outer solar system from which objects could form. Now when we say ice, water ice is definitely a portion of that, and there is a lot of water ice there. But we also see things like methane and ammonia as ices in the outer solar system as well. And they can be significant components of some of these moons. Now this image was taken back in 2010 by the Cassini spacecraft when it flew past Mimas, exploring it as part of that mission, which lasted a decade or so. And that was one of our closest up explorations of Saturn, being able to explore the system and its moons by a spacecraft out there for a very long period of time. Now Mimas is also sometimes nicknamed the Death Star moon for its resemblance to the Death Star from Star Wars. And you can kind of see that here, although it's not quite as obvious in a very close up image. But the large crater there kind of gives that rough resemblance to the Death Star. Now, interestingly enough, Mimas was not first imaged until after the original Star Wars and Death Star came out. So it was not something that was even known at the time. So the creators of Star Wars would not have known that the moon looked like this, because that was not discovered for another year or two after the release of the original Star Wars movie. So that was our picture of the day for January 12th of 2025. It was titled Mimas, small moon with a big crater. We'll be back again tomorrow for the next picture. So until then, have a great day, everyone, and I will see you in class.